going to start this year with why are we doing family faith formation? What is the purpose of even this thing that we're doing with religious education? And it is, we have to recognize some conditions. And our world is so distracting that this is a simple thing. I'm not going to say anything to you that we don't already know, but we sometimes forget because it becomes so commonplace. So we're going to talk about the fallen human condition. God made us, and He made us beautiful and wonderful with love, and sent us into the world, and we chose sin. We are broken now. And so what we're going to talk about today is the ways in which that occurs. So we are broken. Now, there are two ways that I'm talking about with broken. So the first one is that we have flaws, right? So maybe I'm too short, maybe I'm bald, maybe I'm too hairy on my back, or too tall, or maybe I'm too skinny, maybe I'm too fat. Maybe I'm just really annoying, right? So there are flaws that we have, and some of these are physical things. They're things we don't like about our person. Some of them are from the condition of our childhood. Maybe we were up. My father was an alcoholic. That's a wound in my life, right? Those are things, they're flaws. Now, the important thing about this kind of brokenness, I'm not responsible for it. There isn't a moral thing. But we need to talk about it because we often use these parts of brokenness to beat ourselves up. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. Everybody's better than me. And we use these things to defeat ourselves. And so it's important that we recognize that not because we're responsible for them, because we need to be able to conquer them. Now there's another kind of brokenness. This is the one that I'm going to focus more on. And this is the one that we do have an effect on. This is sin. I sin, right? I'm a broken person. I hurt people that I love. I do things that I know are wrong, right? I am broken. And this is a distinct difference. So this is actually here where we have evil, right? We actually have evil. Is everyone okay with Star Wars? Okay, I won't do Star Wars anymore. So, this is a different kind of brokenness. This is one that it comes from our fallen condition, but it's also something that I make worse. I make choices. I choose to do things that I know that I shouldn't do. And like I said, I hurt people that I love. So let's go ahead and go on. So that's how we are broken. We're also empty. And we can see this when we look at our life. I think about when I was a teenager. I told my mom one day, I'm going to get on my bike and I'm just going to ride west. And later on, she told me she was always nervous that I would do that one day. What was I seeking? How many of us ever had that when we were teenagers? We were going to go out, we were going to change the world, we were going to find meaning. Anyone? Yeah, we had that drive, that really strong. There's an emptiness in us. There's something we want, greatness, and we can't find it. So we're searching for this emptiness. And that is part of where we are empty. Okay, there's a longing for meaning. And one of the things that we end up doing is we start filling that desire for meaning. We start trying different things. I'm going to make it job. I'm going to make it money. I'm going to make it possessions. And all of us know, I don't have to tell you that those things aren't going to give us happiness. All of us are pursuing those things. I'm regularly pursuing things. I put the TV on there because of me. Like, I know TV is not going to give me happiness, but the first thing that I do when I come home, I've had a long day, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch something stupid on TV. I know it's not going to give me happiness, but I'm using it to fill that. And so we have all these things, and of course, none of them are able to give us meaning. And even family we can put in there, and I'm going to talk more about that. Family is very important. Ultimately, it isn't enough to give us completion either, to give us meaning. Let's go ahead and get rid of those things. The next one is that we're lost. And what I mean by saying that we're lost is that, so we have this emptiness, we have this desire for meaning, for purpose in our life, and we do not have the answer. We do not know what will fill that. And what's worse about this, we can't find the answer. This is what every self-help book is about. This is what the human condition has been for eons. We have all been searching for the meaning of life, and no one has been able to find it of our own power. This is what all the great religions of the world are trying to seek. Now, of course, we have something unique, right? Our faith does not come from a bunch of men sitting down and coming up with good ideas, right? I'm stealing from the next talk, right? We cannot find the answer of our own power. But Jesus, who is God, is able to reveal to us what the answer is. So, it's a little hope for the next talk. But of our own power, we cannot come to the answer on our own. The final condition that I want to talk about is that we are alone. Almost all of us have that feeling of alone. We feel like we're the only one with this thing. We're the only one that's struggling. Nobody understands me. Even we have a spouse. So I married the most beautiful woman in the world, right? So my wife, Cecilia. And she is just the most amazing person I ever could have married. She keeps me good. She keeps me going to church. She makes me cut my hair. She's perfect, right? But even with Cecilia, she's aging. She's eventually going to abandon me, either because I make too many jokes about her, or just by the aging process. We are all living in a dying world. And even my children, we have 4 children. One of them is here today. The rest of them will be here next week. We had fevers this week, so we didn't want to keep our children sick. One of them doesn't have a fever is here. We have 4 children. Eventually, in their 50s, they're going to move out of the house, right? They're going to eventually move out. We're all passing. We live in a dying, decaying world. That's very sad. That's very upsetting. That eventually, we will all lose people to dementia, aging, even just to death. We are alone by our human condition. All of these things are only when we consider our human condition. Don't worry, there is a lot of hope. This talk is actually about hope. I want to make sure that we understand these things. These are the common things that all of us feel in some ways, and there are probably a lot more that we could add to this list. I wanted to illustrate these. I told you we'd use the prodigal son skit. And real quickly, you can see this in the prodigal son skit. It's so overused, this discussion, but it really is a tremendous, story for a number of reasons. So we have the first thing. Sorry, the pictures are a little corny. It's hard to find good biblical pictures. So here I've got the son. He's getting his inheritance, right? We all know the prodigal son story. The prodigal son, he goes to his father, and he says, Father, give me all the money that I'm going to get when you die. He's basically saying, Father, you're dead to me, and I want what's coming to me. So he gets the money. He goes off on this great search. There has got to be meaning somewhere else out there. He goes, and what does he do? It tells us in Scripture that he spent it. It says a life of debauchery, I think. So he's out there with prostitutes and drugs and parties and all kinds of stuff. So he's searching for meaning there. What ends up happening? He ends up not finding anything. And here he is with the pigs. He ends up with a bunch of pigs, realizing that he's dead. So let's look at those in terms of the things that we talked about. So the first thing is, he's empty. And what do we mean by empty? We meant there was this desire for meaning in his life, and he couldn't find it where it was. So he goes off into the world. And that's the loss. He's out there searching, and he's realizing, I don't have the answer, and I can't find the answer on my own. And then he tries all these things to fill that lost emptiness. And what happens? He becomes even more lost. This becomes the problem. I start filling my life with alcohol, or I start filling my life with TV, or whatever the possession is. I get more lost, and I feel more empty. And those things might give us satisfaction. I love Amazon. I order stuff at Amazon, and then I get to wait for 2 or 3 days, and then it arrives, and I'm so excited, and I carry the package in, I open it up, and then, no, we gotta order something else now, right? No, okay. I'm glad none of you have that problem. But it's very disheartening. Even when my wife gets packages, it's not even for me, my package came. It's exciting. But then the disheartening, it's like, all right, gotta go buy something else now. We are constantly feel more and more empty by it. And finally, he realizes, I'm alone. He comes to the realization, I'm dead. And why is he alone? He's spent all his money. All of his youth is wasted. He's alone. And finally, he's broken. All of the conditions that we see. Now, there is something spectacular that doesn't happen very often in the Bible, in this story, that makes it one of my favorite. What does he say? He's sitting there among the pigs. What does he generally say? They're eating better than I am. And he says, I'm going to go back to my father, and I'm going to say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. This is a phenomenal thing, because when we see a lot of people sinning in the Bible in our own life, they never get to this point. I have sinned. We see Adam and Eve, we see you see David, you see Moses, you see all these really holy people. They sin in the Old Testament. What do? They blame somebody else. The prodigal son is the one that says, I have sinned. And I no longer deserve to be called God's son. This is why, so from our human condition, he should just sit there and die. That's it. Because there is nothing, there is no meaning in this world. The problem for us is when we're searching for Amazon and TV to give us the answer, it's like, have you ever read Shakespeare's sonnets about love? They're really beautiful. So I went and I bought a calculus book so that I could understand the meaning of those. Am I going to find the meaning of Shakespeare's sonnets in a calculus book? No! We're searching for the answers to our life in the wrong place. The material world will never provide us with what we need. And as long as we search there, we will be more and more lost and more empty. We have to have the realization that we are these things. We are broken, we are empty, we are lost, we are alone. And then we can do what the prodigal son said, turn to the Father and say, I'm lost, I'm broken, I'm empty, I need you. And then, of course, the story doesn't end with him dying with pigs, right? It ends with him going and being embraced by the Father. So I'm going to stop there, and what we're going to do, I have some small thoughts. This is Deacon Mark here, or he's soon to be deacon. He's going to be ordained this upcoming Saturday. They let him through. It's a 5-year process of preparation. Yeah, it's a big, intensive process. Your wife goes through everything with you, so it's a real big commitment from a household to do it. Something for all of our husbands to pray about and consider. But Mark is going to go ahead and talk to us, and he's going to help give us the hope that we're supposed to have with this topic.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm not going to start and make the mistake John did. My wife is here, and as far as I'm concerned, my wife is not aging a day. She's actually getting younger. It's amazing.
They're never coming back.
So John asked me to give you a little bit of a witness talk and then talk about hope a little bit. And John stole my thunder, but it's a perfect lead-in because he was talking about the story of the prodigal son, which is my favorite parable, is my favorite story in the Bible, because I can identify with the son, and I've come to know the Father. I was the prodigal son at one point in my life. Up till about 15 years ago, 14 years ago, I was broken and lost, and flawed, and alone, and nearly hopeless. Didn't have a reason, couldn't find a way to get out of the dark corner that I had found myself in. I was raised Catholic, and in our early 20s, after Lauren and I got married, we decided, and I guess I should say probably I made the decision for the family as the head of the household, that we didn't need to go to church, but we would raise our children Catholic, which we did, but we took the position that it was the church's responsibility as the primary educator of our children. Sent the kids to school, but we didn't pay much attention to their Catholic education or their upbringing. I went out and pursued a career and made that the most important thing in my life. At some points, my wife would concur that it was more important than my marriage or my family. And over time, I made a lot of bad, looking back on it, decisions, but at the moment seemed perfectly justifiable. I was providing for my wife, I was providing for my family, I was supposedly doing the right things. And as years went by, didn't have much of a faith at all. I turned to alcohol. And over years, at some point, I passed an invisible line, and my drinking became very problematic, and I became an alcoholic. And that accumulation of years of drinking and not having a faith life, not being anchored to anything, having no relationship with God, led me to a point where I was broken, I was flawed. I could look in the mirror every day when I got out of bed to shave, but I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I knew I had a problem. I had no idea what the answer was. None. It never at that point in time occurred to me that the answer was staring me right back in the face. I had to make a decision that I needed help, and that all of the answers that I had come up with were wrong. My best thinking got me where I was, and I was alone. And in a moment of desperation, I had a moment of clarity, a single moment of clarity where I reached out and said to my wife and to my God, although I didn't know it at the time, that I'm an alcoholic, I am broken, I am flawed, I'm alone, and I can't go on. Please help me. Please help me. And that's the moment where an alcoholic carves out a bottom. It carves out a bottom. So I went to rehab. This is 13 years ago. I was talking to my wife on the way over here today because as I'm getting older, I completely forget times, dates, things like that. But it was 13 years ago, roughly, that I went into rehab and started going to AA. And in the 12-step programs, whether it's AA or NA or any of the other ones, they tell you that unless you develop a relationship with the God of your understanding, with a higher power, and surrender your life to that higher power, that your situation will not improve. I couldn't live the way I was living any longer because I had no hope. And now, when I heard that, I had a glimmer of hope. And it's from that glimmer of hope, that I could build a foundation. So I started on my quest to find the answer, because the answers that I had come up with were wrong. My best thinking got me where I was. And the thing that I find so fascinating about our faith and about our God is the story of the prodigal son. The thing that impresses me the most, that has the most impact on me today, is not the fact that the son had all these character flaws, these character defects, and he was broken and he was flawed because he was looking for God, but he kept finding gods with small g's. Is that when he decided to go home to his father was already outside the house, looking out in the horizon for his son. And as soon as he had a glimpse of his son, the father ran to his son. He didn't wait for an apology. He ran to his son, and when he found his son, he embraced his son. He told his son how much he loved him and said, "We're going to have the best party, the best feast you can possibly imagine, and call everybody together because my son was lost but now is found." But it was the father who took the initiative. So the good news, I think, today is that we talk sometimes about we have to go looking for God, that we have to reprioritize our life, and we have to figure out where we've been wrong, where we've sinned, where we've made mistakes along the way. And we think we have to go on a quest for an elusive God who's there, but we have to go find him, and it's our responsibility to find him. But that's not what goes on. That's not the story of the prodigal son. The father was relentlessly looking for and hoping for his son to turn back to him. And the moment he did, the moment I did, the miracle happens. Because God is relentlessly seeking us. It's God who's looking for us. And when we turn to him, he's right there. He's right there. And when we see that and we surrender to that, that's when the work of restoration can begin. That's when we can rebuild and we can reprioritize our lives. And that's when the seed of hope sets in. That little mustard seed that's in every one of us. In every one of us. St. Augustine once famously said, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee." And the idea behind that is God has planted the seed of us seeking meaning and purpose and fulfillment in our life in each and every one of us. Every one of us. So we begin that journey. Our hearts are restless. We live our lives. We get busy. We find other priorities. We find other things, people, places, and things. And we develop attachments, and a lot of times they're unhealthy. It can be alcoholism. It can be addiction. It can be pornography. It can be gambling. It can be our own family. If we put our spouse and our children as the most important thing in our life, with nothing more important than that, we still miss the mark. That's not that's bad, but we miss the mark. God is calling us into relationship with him. He's seeking us. He's wired us to go looking for him. And the minute we turn to him, he's there because he's seeking us. He's trying to find us. That feeling of brokenness goes away. That feeling of being flawed goes away because I've restructured everything now in my mind and in my life and my priorities. God's the most important person, the most important relationship in my life. And if I can't get that right, then what good am I to myself or to anybody else around me? How can I serve and be of service if I don't have the grace of God flowing through my veins? In my words and in my actions and what I do. So this story of God seeking us and finding us is the story of our times. It's been the story since Jesus Christ came here, gave us the good news, redeemed us, and invited us back into a covenant with him, a lifetime covenant for all eternity. For all eternity. So I believe the challenge in front of us, each one of us, each and every day, they tell us in the 12-step program that all we have is a daily reprieve based upon the fitness of our spiritual condition. A daily reprieve. And if we lose sight of that daily reprieve, we put ourselves at risk again because we allow those other things like pride and envy and lust, all those things to come back into our lives. We allow ourselves to reprioritize things and reshuffle the deck because then we'll say to God, you got this piece, God. I'll go to church on Sunday. I'll try to be a good parent. I'll try to do those things. You help me over here. Don't worry, I got the rest of it. I'm doing pretty good. The minute I start thinking like that, I'm in trouble. I can't compartmentalize God. God wants all of me. He wants all of each and every one of you. And he will chase you down. He will relentlessly chase you down. So when we reframe our thinking and realize we have this daily reprieve, we can also kind of turn that around and look at what does it mean when we say we're Catholic, and what does that mean? It means we have to have a daily conversion. Every single day we have to remember in prayer in the morning, who's the most important person in my life today? Who's in charge? Who's the director? I'm his servant. God, what do you have in store for me today? For my wife, for my family, for those I encounter. I reprioritize, I reshuffle my deck. When we look at it like that, we take on a new meaning. Things take on new meanings. My family, my marriage, let's talk about our marriage. My marriage isn't necessarily about making my wife happy, keeping my wife off my back. It's not about that. My job now is about getting my wife to heaven. When we look at our family, we don't just look at our immediate family anymore. We think about family now in the context of our domestic church. I'm a member of this family, of this communion with you guys. I'm accountable to you. You're accountable to me. We have to do this together in communion because I can't do this alone. I need you. I need each and every one of you. The people here that are in this room that I haven't even met yet, and I hope to, I need you. I need you here on Sundays. I need you in ministries. I need you to show me what it looks like to be Jesus Christ in the world, because I forget. But when I see wonderful acts of mercy and kindness and you serving people, I'm reminded and I'm inspired of what it looks like when God's grace works through you. When we lose hope, when we're alone and we're broken, when we're flawed, when we're all the things that John talks about, we've lost the sense of purpose and hopelessness sets in. Some people, some folks don't have that sense of community to be able to reach out to for help. I've seen dozens of men and some women die from the disease of alcoholism in the 13 years that I've been sober. I've also seen people who you thought would never, ever recover and get sober. And I've seen them get sober. I've seen them firsthand develop a relationship with God. I've seen them firsthand get on their knees and surrender their lives. I've seen them restore their marriages. I've seen them develop relationships with their children that were completely broken and separated. I've seen them come back together again. And I see the acts of service that they do in the community and for their fellow alcoholic. They inspire me in that community as well. The common thread in all of this is that when we were utterly hopeless, when we finally acknowledged that maybe my way isn't the best way, maybe there's a better way. We have that one moment of clarity when we feel that God is knocking on the door. He has chased us down, and we have that moment where we can say yes. And it's in that yes, and it's in that moment that hope can be restored, and we can rebuild from there. Maybe to the men out here, I would invite you, if that message resonates with you, we started a program called That Man Is You on Saturdays, on Saturday mornings. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. I spoke briefly about it last week. But the idea in that environment is for the men to gather together and talk about hope, and talk about what it means to be a male leader in their community and in their family and in their faith. So if you're interested in that, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that as well, because it's going to follow from this idea of what we're talking about today, is acknowledging who we are and how we're broken as men and in our society and in our role as leaders, and what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? So I will stop there. Thank you for your attention, and I will turn it over to John, I believe.
Realization that we are broken, empty, lost, and alone. It's enough to crush us. But the thing is, with Christ, all of those are conquered. We are healed by Christ. Our wounds are made complete. We are healed by Christ. Our emptiness and our losses are filled up. We gain life with the Trinity, with God, with the community. How can I be alone when I have the community? It's through Christ and the church that these things are healed in us, and that we actually can find hope and joy, and not just for this temporary moment, but for eternal life. The word prodigal, does anyone know what the word prodigal means? It means extravagant. He's the extravagant son. He's going out and looking for joy and fulfillment extravagantly. The question that I want us to focus on now is really with our children. We live in an extravagant, a prodigal world. How do we help them to know that their ultimate joy is not in anything that the world offers? It's in our faith. So that's what we're going to go ahead and discuss.